Hi, this is Kees Ganem. I have done interviews of several authors about their books, and I decided to do one for myself. And so I'll start by doing my first novel, and that is called Final Flight from SANAA. And this is the book here. Okay, picture of the beautiful city of SANAA. Okay. And this actually was published about 2.5 years ago. It's a story of a physician, a Canadian physician of Yemeni origin, who was asked to go and inspect some X-ray equipment in Yemen to make sure that it is working properly, and therefore he is sent initially to Poland to look at the equipment, where he happens to meet a Danish woman who happens to be married, and they have a brief love affair. But then he goes to Yemen and inspects the equipment. Everything's fine. But just as he is going back to Canada, he's asked by an old classmate of his to look at his daughter, who's having convulsions, seizures, and nobody could diagnose them and find out why. And because of some expertise that he has, he discovers that these are actually false seizures, so they call them pseudo-seizures. And eventually finds out by talking to her privately that it was because she was raped by an officer of the national security, who happens to be a captain in the army, who also happens to be related to the Minister of National Security, who is a big general. So when the whole thing is discovered by National Security, of course, Dr. Hakim, that's his name in the story, ends up in jail being tortured. And then the Danish lady gets involved in an attempt to rescue him, because she is part of Amnesty International. So I won't tell you, divulge the end of the story, but that's the story in brief. What the story also does, which is amazing really, that it predicts the attack on the palace of the president of Yemen at that time. His name, as everybody knows, was Ali Abdullah Saleh. But it was actually submitted to the publishers about 2 months before this happened. In any case, I'll read to you some reviews by several people, and the reason why I include them is that they're not just by Yemenis or Arabs. There are also people who are non-Arabs at all, so they have an interest in this book, and yet they appreciate it very much. Well, here's one by someone who is an Arab, and that's Dr. Adil Awlaki. He actually happens to be a surgeon, well-known surgeon in UK, in London. And he says, a good read spanning many years and experiences. And he recognizes this, what I told you about the attack on the palace, almost prophetic in regard to the Arab Spring and the recent events in Yemen. Intricate storytelling offering a feast of the humorous as well as the very serious. It deserves wider readership by translation into Arabic. And by the way, I have translated it into Arabic, and it is on Smashwords, on the website Smashwords. Smashwords is a very big publisher. I didn't realize that until I uploaded my book a few months ago. And the book is there, of course, under an Arabic title, which translates into Akhir Ta'ira min Sana'a, for those who know Arabic. Another person who talks about the book, and this time it is actually a Yemeni woman. She didn't want to divulge her name, for obvious reasons, as you'll see from what I will tell you. Let's call her Saida. And she says, Ghanem's novel is fascinating, moving, and beautifully written. He covered most of the social behaviors in Yemen and was unbiased in addressing and comparing Western and Arab societies, especially in Yemen. Being a Yemeni woman raised in conservative society, I must say some of the sex scenes seemed daring, and yet they were provocative and interesting. The chapter which described the rape of his classmate's daughter touched me so much and brought memories of a rape attempt during my own childhood. There is no doubt that Ghanem showed his deep perception of both societies. And here's a brief report by a man from New Zealand. His name is Sam Tagg, and he says, I thoroughly enjoyed reading it. The book is really fabulous, illuminating the various facets of Yemeni social life, customs, traditions, rights, sexual perversions, etc., and also the corrupt political, judicial, and administrative systems prevailing in the country. All these have been illustrated in humorous and witty style with sexual references that enhance its appeal. The book is very revealing of the secrets and lifestyles of the Yemenis and would be of immense value to all those who wish to go to Yemen. Turning to someone who is non-Arabic speaking, has nothing to do with Yemen, happens to be a dentist here in Ottawa, Michael Pilon. He says, I found Final Flight from Sana'a to be a roller coaster. It had a powerful message, and one that may be playing out in some Mid-Eastern countries as people are exposed to venues that bring to light injustice and an inequitable distribution of wealth and lack of a democratic ability to correct these failings of their society. There is one by a Pakistani lawyer, Shala Khan-Salter, which indicates that she was really very pleasantly surprised that someone tackled the issue of sexuality amongst Muslims. And she says the following: it is by taking note of books like Final Flight from Sana'a and authors like Case Ghanem who blaze the trail and fearlessly begin the dialogue that we can start the discussion. During the last few decades, I have read many books, but few of them deal with the issue of sexuality among Muslims and how the sexual attitudes of Muslims affect their human rights and their self-determination, both in Muslim communities here in the West and in Muslim countries. She adds, the book is sexually explicit in parts and challenged my own Puritanism, possibly because it was a candid snapshot of sexuality among Muslims in particular. And to end up a brief statement by a young lady who is of Lebanese origin, but very much Canadian indeed, and her name is Tamara, and she says, Final Flight from Sana'a was the most intriguing story I have ever read. Most importantly, Final Flight from Sana'a began long and heated discussions amongst my friends and me, circulating topics about religion and dictatorships. And presumably by circulating, she means through Twitter and Facebook, which young people use these days. The book has been requested by many of those who surround me. I hope you too go out and experience this alluring, fulfilled, and stimulating challenge. So these are the reviews of this book, and this book again was actually published here in Ottawa. It exists in both soft cover and also in e-book form, and you'll find it as usual on Amazon